All right, should be. Yep, I see the file. We are recording for chapter 17 of The Password is Courage, and this one is a bit more lively, I guess you could say, than some of the other chapters. Because it does actually cover quite a few things that happen. First, it does start with him leading his men into the train yard, and how beforehand originally they would not have been happy about this because it technically would be helping the war effort, which is something that POWs cannot be asked to do. They cannot be asked to do something that directly helps the war effort. But he does explain to them that, well, this is also an opportunity for a lot of sabotage, but be smart with the sabotage, okay? Don't tear up the rail yard. That's not going to help anything because they know you're doing it then, and they'll just kill you. Instead, sand and rocks in the axle boxes, which that would be like where oil is held and can be pushed out to make sure that the axles are running. So by putting sand and stones in there, yeah, it's going to grind that up. Hey, I actually wrote the list in my notes. Change destination cards, and I have examples of what he did. Loosening floorboards and putting holes in roofs. So the holes in the roof, well, both of those would mean if the floorboards are weak, then it may break, or at least it's leaking stuff out. If there's holes in the roof, water and such can get in, which can spoil whatever is contained. The changing the cards can mean, describes that he at one point sent cement that was meant for Italy to the Russian front, and food meant for the Ukrainian steppes was sent to Holland, while Ukraine got green paint. Yeah. Okay. A little bit more in there, but just going straight to this. It did then... sorry, my brain just turned off a little bit. They were eventually pulled off, but it was done basically quietly, which could mean that they figured out that the POWs had to be doing it, but they didn't know how, so it's not like they could accuse anyone, just this assignment's over, go away. The other couple points there was when they first went, they actually marched there and made it look like they would have pride in their work to dissuade anyone from thinking that they are going to be committing sabotage. But the main thing here is actually some explanation for why this was even possible, which is basically what I was saying in the previous video as far as how it just doesn't make sense that you would so take away logistical power during a war, but that's exactly what happened. And I didn't look it up. I am kind of interested in doing so. Sorry, I got an itch on the tip of my nose. But it describes Hitler had a guns before butter strategy, which was essentially turn all things to the benefit of the war effort. The problem is that that apparently also meant pulling away from your logistical infrastructure. So the railways, despite being profoundly important, they weren't being maintained. So more and more pressure was being put on to the, that's very annoying because it's not even like I need to sneeze. It's just a little itch on the skin of my nose. So yeah, I think more and more pressure was being put on the railways, but at the same time, they would take more and more resources away from them. So this is why then the POWs were necessary to be brought. It was necessary to bring them in to help with bottlenecks in there, because they didn't have the manpower to support all this, which is really stupid. I mean, it's like that's a terrible strategy. That is never how you should try to do this, because logistics are unnecessary. Okay, so the 2 days have elapsed. The rail yard activity has probably spanned longer than that, but 2 days. He goes back to meet the photographer, who it is described, so my memory wasn't completely wrong, just half wrong. He is described as being 60 years old, so he's an older man married to a younger woman, which is what I had remembered before, but I was associating... I basically merged in my mind the photographer and the optician in my mind, because they are both Polish, both men, but the woman is the photographer's wife. His name's Otto, by the way. And even mentions that... And to be clear here, I'm sure it was more of a, we can use this to our advantage, not a, this was set up. Her attractiveness is actually used as part of this, in that Otto does in fact explain to him that when he first met her, when Coward first met the wife, I don't think we ever get her name. We haven't so far anyway. She was intentionally being attractive to him because it's a test to see will he be distracted by her. If he can be, then it means he's not going to be as focused as necessary onto the work they have for Coward. So that was in fact a test, which he even has comment in there about how, well, that's disappointing. I thought she actually liked me, or just like, or at least I didn't think she was putting that on, especially for me. It's just a mundane task. Yeah. I'm just checking. Okay. He does also, Otto does explain he's part of the Polish underground army as well as the optician Jan. And he even says that all Polish are part of the army. So don't worry. There's always somebody around you. Okay. He then goes on to explain, and he does make one point that is a little interesting, but not surprising. That basically, yeah, there's a lot of people suffering, but we're the Polish underground army, so we're going to focus on the Poles. Which, nothing wrong with that. And it is not like they're not going to be helping others. It's just that's their focus. Because he talks about how, yes, the Jews are suffering the most in Auschwitz, but basically every nationality that the Germans don't like, that the Nazis don't like, are there and being killed. So they actually have a Polish underground army battalion. No, what was the word? Column. Sorry, it's column in Auschwitz already. So what they need Coward to do to be is a person that can get into the factory where they are and outside. So he's the middleman between the underground and the column. And he does also explain that the sergeant major before him also was serving as this. That's why the guns are there in the POW camp, because those were meant to go to this column, because they will do stuff. And Otto does also explain that, yes, they've already done things. They've held small revolts there and have killed Germans. So this is, even though there's that element of, yeah, we're doing this to help the Polish people in there, it is still explaining to Coward that, yes, this is still going to further his own desire of revenge against the Germans, against the Nazis for what they're doing to the Jews. But also in general, because I want to say at this point, no mention had been made about the groups besides the Jews being targeted in the Holocaust, which is, by the way, is completely true. The Jews suffered the most, but basically everyone that Nazis didn't like were also involved, but in much, much smaller numbers. I think it's even safe to say, like, orders of magnitude. Like, the Jews were the only ones that were in the millions. Everyone else was just somewhere in the thousands. I don't, like, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, but millions, that's only the Jews. And I might be misremembering that. That is only on my memory. But I am pretty sure that was the gap. Okay. The contact in Auschwitz, his name is Heki. It isn't, but that's what they call him, so, there's some protection there. And the meeting is made in the cellars. So Coward is able to walk into the factory, and importantly, when he does, Fritz, his normal guard, who comes up later, he actually waits at the door, which makes some sense. The factory itself is going to be secure, and Coward does have business throughout it, because wherever there are POWs working there, he has a right to be there. He can also go and see the people in charge of the factory as well. And as I said, it's a secure place, so he can basically go around anywhere. They're just going to make sure he's the one that comes in and he's the one that leaves. There aren't other people. So the gate, the guard is the gate, and the fence around, as opposed to somebody walking with him. So he's able to go in and move about, see some things and all that. And he has to go to the cellars. He makes his way to the cellars, which is described as being pitch black. But still, Heki is there. And he is able to... Coward had put the guns and such in paper wadding underneath his service blouse, so his shirt. And then Ian just was pulling those out to hand to him. And he also gave the man some chocolate. And as he was leaving, he could hear the sounds of being ravenously devoured, because even just the feeling of the hands, and he even patted the guy on the shoulder, could tell that this dude was in the final stages of starvation. That's how bad it was. So he did. He couldn't bring all of them that first trip. He had to make another trip, and he did bring food with him, more food with him then. So a mention is also made, and this is also interesting. Coward was so trusted by his men. He never told them any of this. They were completely uninvolved with this portion of the... That will change later, at least to some degree. But he is not involving any of them with the sneaking of this stuff in. However, he does ask them for cigarettes and even some food, like coffee and such, from the Red Cross parcels. And the men are giving it to him, no questions asked. Because basically it's you're asking for it and you're saying it's being put to good use, here you go. That's enough. And he even mentions that Coward gave up smoking, as did some of the others, so there'd be even more cigarettes available for this. But some of the stuff that happens, like the stuff where the other POWs will be aware of it, that will be a later chapter. They wouldn't necessarily know everything, but there's some that they would definitely have to know. Okay. So at this point, got highlights to read. We get a little bit more information about the Sodan Commandos, which actually, hang on, let me see what this translates to. Nope, that's not the right word. Going to this. Special unit, okay. It explains that they basically are themselves prisoners at Auschwitz, but they've been given special privileges, so they would be kind of like the capos, because generally it'll mean they get to live a little longer, but only a little bit. So they're the ones that are making sure that the Jews are stripped before going into the gas chambers. Remove the bodies from the gas chambers, and also remove their hair, teeth, all that from the bodies. Yes, hair, because it's actually used in like pillows and mattresses. I want to say that's because just the hair makes a packing material, not because sick fucks wanting to sleep on dead people hair. It's like there are like horsehair mattresses, or used to be, so and human hair would be finer, but it's still this is fucked up. Anyhow, it mentions in here, and this I don't remember. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is kind of stuff you could learn in high school history, but I don't think they get into some of these details. Because when they go into the gas chambers and people start dying, some of them, they are themselves near dead, but they still are trying to cling to life and such, and will actually try to get out and are clawing over bodies. So many bodies would crawl over each other in their last death throes that special spiked poles had been devised to drive into the flesh and haul them out. That's fucked up. But it's kind of like that scene in Judgment at Nuremberg. It's part of the practicality of genocide. It's disturbing, it is wrong, it is evil. But, yeah. And this is something that the Sodan Commandos are having to do. It then continues. Sodan Commandos remove all the hair from the bodies of valuable war material and all teeth, most especially the gold ones so beloved of continental peoples, then pile the bodies on steel trucks that ran straight to the furnaces. I think that the teeth might also be something that may survive through the furnaces, depending. I'm not sure, and I don't feel like checking on that. At what temperature does teeth turn to ash compared to bone? Because yes, you can definitely have a crematory at a high enough temperature, but are they necessarily doing that? I could believe they might figure, it's easy enough to pull the teeth out first and then only worry about the bone. Many of these gruesome attendants went mad or asked for death themselves. In any event, few survived the job for more than a few weeks. Some of them were compelled to pull the bodies of their own families from the chambers and load them into the fires. The horror of it all defies full comprehension. There we go. But it should never be forgotten. Yeah. I started highlighting that even before getting to the it should not be forgotten, but no, it really shouldn't. And again, it's I was talking about how with the capos having it be other prisoners do it, that is even more so damaging to somebody's humanity. But it is also that, I mean, at least the capos, I mean, I can believe that they can separate some a little bit if they are just natural bullies, excuse me. But the zone commandos here and that work, no, that's gonna break them. That absolutely is far worse, psychologically to them. So, but it is multiple levels of evil and fucked upness. Now we get to one part that I remember for years. Okay, that and it is really an amusing thing. I didn't realize how long it went on here. All right. So Coward needs to go in and do stuff, which means he needs Fritz. He needs his guard. At the guardhouse, Fritz waited to take up his faithfully plodding station behind him, but he was astonished to find the German in a splendid new uniform. Blimey, Fritz. They made you up to field marshal or something? The German grinned. Phew. Quite a get-up, isn't it? Big improvement, I must say. Is there a big shot coming today? This where I go mit Count. Always. This where when I go mit Count. Always. Order, Commandant, orders, so. So basically, translating that from the half English, half German, whether this is what I have to wear whenever I go out with the Count. By the Commandant's orders. And this pisses off Coward to a huge degree for multiple reasons, but one is just the whole he technically has been bribing Fritz for well, not years, but for a long time, so Fritz and he are very comfortable together. He's also been teaching Fritz some amount of English, so it makes it easier for them to communicate. So I mean, it really is a Coward needs it to be him that is his guard, and so the idea of him being taken away from him is a big deal. Now, I do also want to mention this. This is, again, one of those things. This is stupid. You should be changing out the guard for that, okay? It's fine if it's on a rotation, Fritz comes back. Maybe. But it depends. But it always being the same guy that risks forming this familiarity that can be an advantage to Coward. So, yeah. That is... You expect there to be some antagonism between them, so you should make sure to avoid that softening. Anyway. So Coward explodes at this, because no, he wants it to be Fritz. He doesn't want to have to wet nurse somebody else. So he charges off to the, I think Unterofficer, it said. So somebody above Fritz. And it just works its way up, not to the commandant. Eventually, though, one of the officers finally is like telling Coward, "Shut up," because he's like threatening to contact the Red Cross, that he is going to complain about this being interference in him carrying out his duties as the Red Cross officer at Auschwitz. He is ready to do that. It's like, "Shut up! What is our name for you?" It's like, I'm so angry right now. I don't even remember. You're Mr. Coward, but we've also been calling you the Count because you always walk around in your best clothes. And it's like, this is something that was pointed earlier, that he is in his service blouse, which I'm pretty sure would be a reference to like a higher level of uniform than his just normal uniform going around. And also how the work party for the Yards went in. They dressed up, including him, like their brass buttons polished, which none of the Germans are. They're in worse uniforms. And so the German is just explaining to Coward that we've noticed this, and that's why we've been jokingly calling you the Count. The word finally got up to the commandant, and he doesn't like that either. So he now has the order that anytime somebody goes with you outside of the camp, they need to be in a new uniform. So they just mockingly gave Coward the nickname the Count of Auschwitz. And eventually that worked up because there's a reason for it, such that now he is always accompanied by a guard in a fresh uniform, so that people are never seeing a dilapidated, worn-out uniform on the German, while the British guy looks like a frickin' officer. Which he isn't, but I mean, it's just, you don't want that happening. That's a huge issue for morale. Oh my god. So Coward, now finally understanding what's going on, he just starts laughing his head off. And is very glad that does mean Fritz is going to stay with him. Although it does mention later on that he actually does have to go in. He sees the electrician again to get more guns. And this time it is not Fritz, but that's just, Fritz is on like shore leave. Like he's just on leave. It's nothing weird. We then do get Otto, the photographer, coming into the camp to take photos, and he's doing this in small groups, so it's going to take more than one day, and does manage to like talk to Coward separately. And it does also mention that when Otto is around the Germans, he uses broken English, but when he's with Coward, no, his English is great. But he is trying to just show off to the Germans. But he does also slip Coward something. This is where the chapter ends. It's like, here you go. This is also for Heki. How am I going to get dynamite in there? I mean, it's like, this is big. I can't just hide this under my uniform. It's like, I trust in the British ingenuity. Don't worry. But Otto does also state something else. I'm pretty sure this is just at the end. Maybe it was a little earlier. Or maybe, let me look. I think it was at the end. I think it was Otto. I don't think it was Jan. Yes. No, it's Otto. And I'm not sure where this may develop to, but regardless. Otto mentions that the Polish have long memories, both for those that have wounded them, but also for those that have done them favors. That basically, if we survive this, you will never be forgotten. Which is fair, but it is also one of those things. I did do some simple YouTube searches before starting these videos. Just to do a simple search for Charles Coward or Charlie Coward. There aren't that many videos on it, and it definitely looks like some on him. I mean, and definitely looks like some of them are very similar. It's like using the same pictures and such, and they look to be also approximately the same length. Which means that technically, assuming that search was comprehensive, I was only skimming, so that's a hell of an assumption. But technically, that would mean I may have actually now at this point spent more time talking about Charlie Coward than the rest of YouTube. Can we fix that? Because I'm saying I'm just talking about the story. I'm talking about the biography here. This is a well-written chapter, by the way, and it is definitely it's a lot of high points. I could. Nah, I can't complain about that. I was gonna say it would be nice if some of them were split out and maybe in different chapters, so you're not having chapters that are a little bit more dull, and then this one that's really up there, and then actually I don't know if it does drop down again. It probably, well, it might. There's still some good shit coming. But anyway. But I was thinking, it's like, okay, well, you could maybe move the train yard stuff over, but the last chapter ended with them getting that, so it's like, well, no, that is a logical cut for the chapter. The only way you could split it up would basically be to split up this chapter, which would mean you'd have to add more, and yeah, no, this chapter is how it is supposed to be. It really is. But, yeah, so the next chapter, though, I'm not sure what, Heki does eventually get dynamite. But that might be a second order of it. There is more stuff that happens. There's a lot more stuff that happens in there. Because I do remember how Heki meets his end. Because he does die. He does not survive through this. But the way he dies is important. Is very important. So, yeah, there's a lot to still happen. Definitely looking forward to that. to getting through all that, because it's a great story, and the fact that it's true is even more cool. But also, just repeating what I was saying before, it is such a shame that this dude has had this, actually more than just this one book. There was another book also about him by somebody else, but also a movie also titled The Password is Courage, and yet he seems not very well remembered. I mean, it is a little sad. But I guess one thing, because like thinking about, because I only watched Schindler's List like within the past year and a half. It just, I finally saw it was streaming. It's like, yeah, I'll watch it. It was interesting. It was enjoyable. But one thing that I will, because I was just thinking, why is it? Because they both are recognized as, I want to see how long I've been going, righteous among the nations, for their great efforts to help and save Jewish lives during the Holocaust. But one thing that is very different between them, and why I could definitely see Schindler getting more attention than Coward, is Schindler, we know who he saved. Like, there are names there. There are families that only exist because he saved them. Because he saved the progenitors and such. We don't have that for Coward. Right? That is a point that comes up later. Well, not actually in the book, but later when I remember when I was looking up him to see how accurate this is, and it is accurate. There was contention over how many Jews he helped save. And partly that's because no one kept notes on that. That wasn't a thing you kept notes on. You just did it. And it's also the nature of how he saves them is not one that really allows for such note-keeping. Schindler, it made more sense for him to have for that list to exist. So I could also believe that that's part of the reason why. It's like how Schindler's List ends with all these people, some of them the original survivors, some of them their children and grandchildren, visiting Schindler's grave. You can't. That's a very powerful image, and also the fact that they had some of the actors also there, like with the families of the people that they portrayed, or with the people that they portrayed even. That you could not recreate that scene with Coward's grave because you don't know who they are, and it's also possible that some of the people that they got to escape. Some of the Jews got to escape Auschwitz, but they may have still died trying to escape out of the area. So it's really, no one knows the true number that both escaped Auschwitz and actually survived the larger thing. So, but still, I would love to see videos of people diving into the history, not diving into the book as I'm doing, but diving into the history of it with other records, and just like going into some of the Nuremberg trial records, because he testified there. Going into some later trials, things like that, other stuff, that would be awesome to see. But it looks like he has sadly been one of the people that is forgotten, despite some of the awesome stuff. I mean, remember, how did this book start? He managed to escape, and one time got into a German hospital where a German general pinned an iron cross on him. And he's a British sergeant major. It's like, this dude's life is wild. How is there not more attention on this guy? But yeah. And adding to that, how did I even know to find this book at one point? Because I randomly saw The Password is Courage on Turner Classic Movies. Some of it is just random happenstance. But hey, if it works, it works. It just, let's try to have it be more than that. So anyway, see you next time.